Welcome to the podcast that questions everything, from conspiracies to philosophy, from science to religion. We will be looking at the construct of the illusion, and as always, we will question everything. Hello and welcome to another episode of Everything's an Illusion, a podcast where we question everything. Today I have our second transatlantic guest, Mr. Matt Masterson, a free-thinking MMA fighter from the United States of America. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Good. Pretty damn good. So, correct me if I am wrong. You have a fight tomorrow or the next day?
It's Friday night, the 10th, so 2 days.
And what is the organisation, and what is the weight class, your opponent? What's the details on that?
My opponent, I'm facing a guy named Leonardo Leite. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. And the promotion is the Final Fight Championship. I'm not very familiar with them, but I think they're a Croatian company, and they did a show last weekend in Florida, and I thought originally that was the one I was going to get scheduled for, and then they changed it or something. I'm not entirely sure. You know, I don't know very much about the promotion, to be honest, so, but that's the name of the promotion, Final Fight. And this is the second show they've done in consecutive weeks. And it's going to be on CBS Sportsnet in the United States. So I'm not sure. Internationally, I don't know how they do the televising or whatever, but I think they have a like an online streaming thing too. So if someone's not in the United States, they can get it that way.
Where is the show?
185.
Sorry, where is the show? Is it in Florida again?
Oh, where? No, Springfield, Massachusetts.
Quality. Are you excited for the fight? Are you somebody who gets, excited or I've watched a fair few of your fights in preparation for the podcast, and the one thing that stands out for me is you're very, very relaxed, almost horizontal, when you enter the cage and when you're in the zone.
Yeah, I try not to get too excited, I guess. It's exciting. It's not like it's not. It's definitely an exciting thing to do. But I tried not to expend energy uselessly, and then that extends beyond just in competition. So I try not to I try not to let the nerves kind of suck my energy. I'm trying to not really think about it too much.
See, that I suppose that's a very interesting concept from a non-fighter. Obviously, as a non-fighter, your only experience with that kind of extreme violence or extreme competition is usually unexpected. It's usually in a street, it's usually some event where it's totally unexpected and your whole body fires adrenaline, endorphins and stuff. And you've somehow, but through experience and through training, mastered that ability to control that dump. With that, am I going somewhere with that?
I don't know. I don't think street fights kind of happen out of nowhere. I think usually you can kind of. I mean, I used to do security at bars, and you can kind of see when things were going to escalate in certain places. So it's not like, I don't know. I wouldn't say that, it goes from 0 to 60, there's usually some kind of lead up to that kind of thing.
No, definitely. There's always, as you say, there's a lead up, but there's like one of the things I used to do with my friends is we used to go cliff jumping, and you might have done it yourself. Find a nice big bridge, a nice big river, or a cliff into some water, a good height, stand on the precipice and take a deep breath and launch yourself into the abyss. And for me, I never got excited at the top. I always had to remain calm. It wasn't until I stepped off the edge that the adrenaline went, wah! And then the fun began. But a lot of people, the adrenaline pumped on the walk up to the cliff.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have access to a lot of like cliffs or cliff jumping, but I think maybe a similar phenomenon or feeling for someone around here would be like a roller coaster or something like that. There's a place close by here that has like a bunch of big roller coasters, and that's kind of, when you're young, it's almost like a rite of passage to a certain extent to go on the big hills. And I don't know, I guess kind of going up the hill, is when the nervous tension kind of rises. So I think that would be maybe a similar kind of thing.
I was when I was watching some of your fight videos back, watching you compete, there was a few interviews where you talked about your training for the fight being used yoga, and yoga obviously is a combination of the mind and the body and breathing, but a big part of it is to silence the mind, is to join the body and the mind together through breathing exercises. Can you talk a little bit about using yoga and the principles that apply to yourself in the fight game or martial arts as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I think it's a great tool for. I think other fighters should do it as well. I think there are a lot of benefits to it, not just necessarily doing better, but like longevity and maintaining, your injuries and managing your injuries and knowing your body better, and understanding like when you should be doing something and when it's your ego kind of, pushing you in a destructive manner. Because there's, in a strong gym, there would be, guys don't want to be the first one to quit or whatever, and sometimes you have to listen to your body and not train smart, not always just try to be like the big guy or whatever. And it's tough to do, and I think yoga is something, and meditation particularly, something that could help people, kind of manage that. Those decisions, and a lot of other decisions too. I mean, obviously that would be kind of limited to people doing cage fighting stuff. But the tool, I mean, it could be used for any decision and any, creative process, I guess.
So what is your, in terms of your yoga routine, what is your yoga routine? Is it a sort of almost ritualistic half an hour a day, or are you...
Not really. Not like I'm probably should be like more strict in terms of, I know there are. I kind of do it when I have time and when it feels like kind of I need it. I guess I don't really have like it's not ritualistic at all. I don't actually don't like the ritualistic aspects of it. That's something that I don't like about how yoga is kind of taught in the West, I guess. And I mean, I wouldn't know how it's taught anywhere else. I mean, just the westernized version of it. I think the ritualistic aspects of it are off-putting to a lot of men in particular, because I think they think it's like weird or whatever. And so I kind of understand that, and I think that like the core of it is meditation, and then everything else is just kind of it's not just stretching, but it's
mindful stretching.
Yes, and it's not I don't know, I feel like it's kind of, the postures are given too much of a emphasis, I guess.
That's I grew up in a family where my mother done yoga, and she was into yoga from back in the day when it sort of hit the West, the kind of, and there's many different forms of yoga. Obviously, there's hatha, the kind of physical type, but there's some different kinds of yoga where it's just about asking questions, and it's about the wisdom. It's almost like philosophy.
Yeah.
But it's any kind of path that joins the mind and the body, usually through breath. I went to a yoga class here in Glasgow in Scotland, and I'm a fairly heavy built, kind of fat, unflexible guy, and 30 women and myself, and near enough every person could do spectacular physical movements, and I literally, when sitting flat, can touch my knees, like nowhere near my toes. And it was one of the most uncomfortable social experiences of my life.
It's definitely humbling to, I guess when I kind of got into doing it was, I'd had my shoulder repaired, and I was kind of introduced to it by an ex-girlfriend, and I had like dabbled in it a little, and I recognized that it was, a powerful thing, a powerful potential, like, for change, I guess, in your body. But I didn't get into it until after I had hurt myself. And then I kind of got into it a lot. And at first it was definitely like humbling to be in a room full of these kind of, little women, and they can do this thing. I thought I was hot shit, and, and they could do this thing and then kind of blow me out of the water. And I felt like, wow, that's what am I doing wrong? And so pretty early on, I figured out it was the synchronizing of the breath and the movement, and that kind of opened up a lot of doors that really had nothing to do with yoga. Like I used to never like to do distance running at all, but it was kind of after I got a feel for the yogic breathing, I found like kind of endurance sport type stuff much more tolerable and even enjoyable, because that was like a plateau that, early in my career, I would just kind of fight all the time, and I didn't really do the other things, just because I didn't have much of an interest in it. So it was definitely a big change in the way I approached training, and the way I approached a lot of things, I guess.
It's quite interesting because I'm a big fan of the classic kind of kung fu films, classic sort of Hong Kong and Chinese cinema, and in that world, there's always the internal and external. So obviously the external is the punching, the kicking, the hard kind of training, and then the internal are like either through Buddhism or through Taoism, the meditation, the Qigong, the Tai Chi. And it's quite refreshing to hear like a the term cage fighter, mixed martial artist, competitor, talking about essentially the internal side of martial arts, through yoga, through meditation, breathing. So I definitely think it's somewhere that all fighters need to go.
Well, there's the thing, and it's kind of a paradoxical thing about mixed martial arts, is that there's a lot of like value, psychological, like therapeutic value in doing it, and like and it's good to have a sport. It's good. There's not a lot of sports that adults can do, and it's good to have something like physical. Because most people, being a football player or a basketball player, I mean, there's, it's if you're not physically a certain way, you're kind of placed out of a lot of professional sports. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of value in like the inherent sport of it. And it's definitely a thing that doesn't get enough play and enough spot. I don't know, like what the term would be, but enough focus. The focus seems to be on other things.
It's on the physicality, the technique, which I think is always going to be the way. Because
I'm not even. I'm not talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. Obviously, the fighting is going to be what matters, but I think the presentation, could certainly be a lot different.
I had a guy on a few months ago called Sifu Ali Blakey, who was
Sifu who?
Ali Blakey. He's from Edinburgh in Scotland, and he was a Sanshu fighter, and so
that's like kickboxing with takedowns.
Yeah, and Muay Thai, kickboxing, Sanshu fighter, and now he really focuses on his Tai Chi and his Qigong, and that sort of progression of
breath and movement. It's similar to yoga in the sense that it's breath and movement. Yeah. So you're doing it on your own, yeah.
So going for the kind of physical, kind of proving himself, if you like, manly kind of martial arts, to getting advocating and pushing forward. And a lot of people, when they first hear him talk about Tai Chi and Qigong, they think, oh, that's useless, and that's this, and he's such a confident, like yourself, a confident guy that's been in these situations, physical contact, that most people will never be in, and with that confidence able to talk about these kind of gentler, softer things that lead to actually who you are in your own mind. This the sort of internal journey to self through meditation and these sort of good things.
Yeah, those are good things.
Hey, that's for sure. So I'm just going to. I've got a whole host of shizing here on a list, and I'll just. Also, I do. There's an interesting thing. Martial arts or mixed martial arts as a term. I have this conversation with my friends quite a lot. I think the term mixed martial arts is quite redundant. And the term martial artist should just be used for good, because essentially there's no mix. There just is. You're a martial artist. You're combining techniques from everywhere, from every art that you can find, and applying them to make yourself better. And if you compete, beat your opponent. Does that make sense at all?
Did you have like a question, or you said? I didn't get it. What you want from me? You just said some things.
So I was just saying that the term mixed
is
martial
redundant.
Arts is redundant. It's kind of just martial arts.
I think people that do the competitions try to, I guess I should preface this. In the United States, there was a movie called The Karate Kid that was in the 80s. I don't know, is that something that...
A classic.
Okay, is that so you are familiar with that?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So one of the fallouts from that movie was that all of these kind of little kids wanted to be Daniel LaRusso or whatever. And so there was, I think the term is McDojo, and there were a lot of there was a groundswell of these kind of traditional martial arts places that were run by people that maybe didn't really have any, I don't know, like fraud. There was a lot of fraudulent stuff and kind of just, ripping, just a thing for kids to do, just a way to get money from kids' parents, and that's kind of what that was. And I think there's people that do real fighting that try to separate themselves from that. But I do think that there's a lot of aspects of the traditional martial arts that that have value. You know what I mean? I think people separate. They try to make that separation because they don't want to be associated with that kind of point karate culture, I guess.
I think it's really interesting that a couple of years ago there was the Lyoto Machida era, where obviously Machida came along with something slightly unorthodox, as by that time mixed martial arts had sort of came to a definitive style. You need some form of grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu prominently, some form of striking, which was usually a Muay Thai style kick, and boxing style hands. And then when Machida came along with a different karate based kicking system, there was a lot of people that got confused as they weren't able to Muay Thai check or to use this kind of style. And I think it's when watching martial arts and MMA, it's bringing that kind of unorthodox style. And from watching your fights, I've seen that you bring a lot of things which are unorthodox. There was a few of them where you were sort of like walking forward and doing like a spinning back fist out of nowhere, like just like turning your whole body to the side and then just releasing spinning back fists, which when things are unorthodox, your opponent can't train for them.
Correct. And that's, I think, part of the value of trying to do different things is that it can take your opponent by surprise if they have, and I mean, sometimes you only have to catch them once. So I think it is good to have a difficult style to prepare for. I think that has, I think that's an advantage I have, and I think that was an advantage that Machida had, like you mentioned. I think that people not really being ready for that probably played a part in the success that he had.
So I've just, when it comes to martial arts, or mixed martial arts and competition, there's been a recent explosion in mixed martial arts, and a big part of it, definitely over here in Europe, is due to a man called Conor McGregor, who, in terms of where I stay, Scotland, he's in Ireland. It's just across the water. It's probably just like in America, it's gone from one state to another. It's very short distance, and I have a lot of people on Facebook and Twitter who, in the 10 years I've been interested in mixed martial arts, have never been interested one little bit, but now are very passionate, very authoritative on the sport.
what advice would you give to somebody who's just getting into mixed martial arts at a very base level, like the first class, or just starting to watch sort of the bigger generic pay-per-views? What advice?
Yeah, if people are just, I don't know, what do you mean? Advice for what?
Two things. Advice for a young fighter just getting into the sport, or a young person just starting to train mixed martial arts who has an ambition to fight.
An ambition to fight? Well, a couple things. I would say that the business side of it is, it's kind of, I don't know. I would never suggest someone, I would never try to push someone towards doing competitions, because it's kind of a trap in some ways. You can, but in terms of challenging themselves and they think oh, can I do this? I would always be, I'd try to be supportive of people that want to compete, but I would also suggest to, have a realistic view of how you're doing, because some people can let their ego kind of blind their self-assessment. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, I guess, because there's a lot of strong fighters out there in the world, and you don't have to challenge. You can kind of do it at your level, and that's what I would suggest for most people to do. But
I think in Scotland here we have I don't know where it is in the US, but there's a very simple kind of system of amateur and pro. So in amateur, it's pretty much seen that you take as many fights as you can, fight the best caliber that you can, because that record will disappear.
Sure, that's kind of how a lot of guys kind of treat it in Ohio. I think they definitely try and I think the amateurs have a lot of pride, even though they don't get paid. I think the spirit of the sport is alive in, I think, the amateur ranks a lot, and I think that's good. I think the amateur promotions are a necessary and good thing.
Oh, definitely. So what advice would you give for someone going from amateur, who's maybe got a fairly good kind of record as an amateur fighter? They have potentially a positive professional career ahead of them. Obviously, in today's world, marketing business is a huge part of the sport. Whether people,
yeah, I'm not good to advise on that kind of stuff. I would be able to help someone get ahead with technique and training and that kind of thing, but in terms of how they should manage their career, I think other people would be better at advising than I would.
So in terms of so I'm going to change angle. For a number of years, I ran it's called the MMA show, which was at that time Scotland's main mixed martial arts broadcast, and I basically ran a YouTube channel where I commented on the various UFC fights. I would go to all the amateur and pro events throughout Scotland, and I would write reports, take pictures.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but how strong was the, I guess, MMA community, for lack of a better term, in Scotland? Was there a lot of events, a lot of gyms and stuff?
So we have, I think at the minute, 2 contracted UFC fighters. There was 3, but 1 got cut recently. So at the sort of, if you take the UFC as the top level, I
wasn't even thinking about them. I was talking about more on the ground. Like,
Yep. So we have Scotland's a small country, 5 million population. Up until recently, there's been essentially a gym called the Dinky Ninja Fight Team, which is actually 3 or 4 different gyms that pull their fighters together so that they can compete and represent in England, where the sport is far more developed and the level is usually a bit higher. And then throughout Europe, Sweden, France, Germany, etc. But in terms of gyms, near enough every town has a gym, an MMA gym.
wow.
Yeah, there's a really big tradition of sort of Muay Thai, kickboxing, and boxing in Scotland. A really big fighting tradition. So people like to fight, but it's usually stand up. I'll give you an example. When I started training MMA 10 years ago, there was no black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the country. And blue belts were generally a blue belt for 5 or 6 years. So the level of the blue belt was quite high, and they would wait for a travelling black belt to come along and promote. But there is a good few black belts in the country now, and the kind of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sports team. There's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu team near enough every town as well. So but we don't have a wrestling sort of part to our culture or community. So there's can people play soccer here? Football is the big sport.
Yeah. Well, wrestling isn't really a big sport in terms of like the big sports in America. Like, it wouldn't be considered a big sport. But the area of the country that I live in, the quality of like the grade school, middle school, and high school wrestling is really pretty good. So that kind of plays into definitely on like a strong kind of amateur, a field, of fighters. There's a lot of guys with wrestling backgrounds, a lot of guys that can punch hard, and so there's kind of a wealth of talent, I think, in terms of like kind of like strong potential. And I think the wrestling has a big part of that, for sure.
I think myself, my personal style is a very wrestling based style, and just because it was unorthodox, it was different. 90% of the people who participate in MMA over the last decade that I've been participating came from a striking background, because there is, say, Muay Thai, kickboxing, boxing, karate in every town. So when you do something different, you've got a chance to make an impact quick. So
sure,
I learned the kind of, plus my body type is good for I've got no neck. So
have you competed?
At grappling.
Okay.
I've competed in numerous grappling competitions, but never in MMA. But I don't have that will or a desire to compete, if you like. But I definitely very active in the gym and help and assist anybody in the team who is, moving towards a fight or fighting.
Sure. Yeah, it's always nice to have someone around that's working towards that. It's fun to support that.
So just gonna move on with my mega list of mega awesomeness. Recently I seen, obviously I met yourself through Masato Toys forum, and me personally I think it's a great place to go and can chat with some interesting folks, and I've seen recently that you did a couple of good threads with regards to Ariel Helwani, the shill, the journalist. What's your thoughts on Big Ariel?
I really don't care. I don't have. I just like to kind of mess with people a little bit online. I don't really care too much about what the UFC does. I don't really watch television much anymore.
That's good. That's good. So, do you read books then? Podcasts. Play music.
I don't listen to podcasts. I read books. I like science fiction. I don't really like nonfiction because I don't feel like it's all a shade of fiction.
So, in terms of science fiction, what is your favourite sci-fi? Not to put you on the spot, but what's your kind of favourite or your top 5? Someday, because there's a lot of people who maybe listen to the podcast who have never read a sci-fi book. Me personally, it's my favourite genre, just after fantasy. Well,
the one that I think is great is the Foundation series by Asimov and the Hyperion series by Dan Simmons. Those two are great. Let's see. Ender's Game is good. I think the series is good. It gets kind of weird. I kind of ran. I mean, I was able to read the first, I think 3, and then it kind of got weird on me.
What was that?
And then Ender's Game?
Ender's Game.
Have you ever read that one?
I
think Orson Scott Card.
I watched the movie of Ender's Game.
Yeah, the movie wasn't that good. The book is way better, I think. And it's short too. That's one I would suggest for someone that maybe doesn't have an interest in science fiction, because it's not very long compared to some of the other ones, and it moves fast. And I think there are some very interesting concepts of it that are way before its time. That when you kind of look back on, you're like, damn, he was kind of weirdly on point with some of the predictions of how the future is going to be. Those are the kind of things I appreciate out of, I think, good science fiction writing, is kind of good predictions, I guess.
Well, you came across and you said Dan Simmons, who is, if not my favourite author. Obviously, there's a Hyperion series, Olympus.
Yeah.
Have you read Carrying Comfort?
I have not.
It's kind of horror, stroke, how the world's kind of run. And it's based on mind vampires, and these kind of, if you like, the political and monetary elite are essentially mind vampires that break into people's minds and just suck them dry like a battery. What
was the name of that one again?
It's called Carrion Comforts.
Carrion Comforts, like carrion crows. Carrion.
Yep, and comfort.
All right, I'll look into that. I need to. I'm traveling later today. I'm gonna probably stop by the library. It'd be good to have a book or two for this weekend. Carrion, what was the last? Comforts?
Yes.
Okay, I will look into that.
Because that was the Dan Simmons.
Yeah, I like Simmons. He's good.
That was the book he was trying to get published, and nobody was going to touch it. And then he wrote, if my memory serves me right, he wrote then the Hyperion series, and it obviously went on to win some awards, and people getting really excited about it. And then on the back of that, he got a deal for Carrying Comforts. But he's one of my favourite. I like his stuff a lot.
Yeah,
he brings forth a lot of really interesting ideas. In Hyperion, he's talking about the AIs, and when the humans die, their brain fires in full cylinders, and they essentially took that neural activity and make a big parallel computer, and that's what powers the AI. So they're teleporting humans all over the worlds, and that death is which is powering their actual computer. I thought that's fucking amazing. How do you come up with that shit?
What's the other one I liked? Have you ever read any of Neil Stephenson's?
No.
He had one. It was called an Anathem, Anathem, and I remember thinking that he did a really kind of good job with the world, like the world building, and that's the one thing about like writing like a novel that I don't think I would be good at is the descriptive. I think if I were like got into writing, I'll be very short and like to the point. I'm not good at kind of the creating a world, like an alternate reality type thing. And I think that's what he did a really good job in that book.
But you said there that you don't think you would be able to, etc. But if you look at it,
I don't mean I wouldn't be able to. I'm sure if I really wanted to, I could, but I don't have a natural inclination towards that kind of writing, that kind of descriptions for everything that kind of gives.
I understand.
Depth.
I understand what you're saying there. Like writing for me, and I had my Sato toys on the podcast, and we talked a fair bit about writing because he's obviously a professional creative, sells his art to the highest bidder. And,
he's a talented guy for sure.
And he does, he in his own time, he's been writing some scripts on a Taoist kind of kung fu, kind of 3 movie scripts. And I think when it comes to writing, it's, I suppose when you walk in the gym for the first time, you see somebody doing some fancy high kicks and some amazing grappling, and you think it's, wow, I'm not that flexible. And then after, a few years of practice, you start to realise that the flexibility was in the yoga, the power came from, for the running, etc., and you build your game, you build your world. I think it comes if you're willing to write. Maybe that's your game plan for the weekend. Start writing.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
It's definitely, I think, there's some famous authors in the past that have said if you really want to know yourself, you should write. Because the sort of characters and the emotions and the way that your characters think about things and see the world and describe the world is essentially an aspect of how you perceive reality and assume that reality works. So you're just getting, if you like, finer details about.
Sure, but the better authors can kind of see the different perspectives. I think when you see,
but it's
like if I were to write a book about some dude that's a fighter, that would be kind of cheesy, like.
But it's still their perspective. It's still
but that's like everyone has their own perspective. I think like the more advanced authors can kind of take different perspectives and still have some accuracy, or if not accuracy, at least.
So like Dan Simmons puts himself in the mind of a 24th century Catholic crusader that's got a AI cross that can bring him back to life. It's still an envisioned reality created in Dan Simmons' head to understand some aspect of himself and how he thinks about life and death, how he thinks about religion, how he thinks about pain, etc., etc. It's a version of him in a different form, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense
whatsoever. There's an author I really like. He's an actual English author, and he's called Peter F. Hamilton. And
I've never heard of him.
It's like Dan Simmons in the sense of there's huge space operas, like ridiculous, big.
Sure, like that encompass multiple generations and multiple
huge, and
Sure.
and you read them and you're just like, holy shit, there's another 8 books. Each book's about 4 or 5 inches thick, and the world that they create, you just get lost, like, totally. And the way that, now, in one of his books he goes into this, and it's way beyond sort of like time and space, and it just, that had to just fries your mind. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Being able to see, and it's because they can get you to kind of create the, use your imagination to create the thing that they're laying out. And it's kind of, it's a skill that they develop, it's, I definitely appreciate people that can write novels. That's a impressive skill.
It's definitely I think when you read as, because there's, I think the new generation coming up, a lot of younger people don't read quite as much, because of the internet and various other things, it's sort of very short.
Well, they read different, they consume information differently, for sure. I wouldn't say that they're not intelligent, because they're, I think, advanced compared to what I was. The internet changes everything. I mean, anyone has a question, all they have to do is go in their pocket and work the Google, and they can at least have factual, or at least some kind of answer for whatever it is that pops in their head. And that's something that, I would have been, I don't know, I think I was in high school when the internet started kind of becoming like popular, I guess. In my mind at the time, it was like kind of nerdy, or, I don't know. So it was like, I was like, I guess, what are they called? Millennial. I'm a millennial.
A millennial.
A millennial is a term that usually used as like a derogatory, for people that are kind of growing up in the internet age, the millennial.
And Dan Simmons, he takes that kind of concept that step further, like they're plugged into the AllNet, where there's no barrier. Like at the minute, as you said, you have to take the phone out of your pocket and type in the question to get the answer. And he takes it to the sort of next level of, you just think it, and like the Matrix, it's actually downloaded in, like, so that people are living in a kind of post-technological society. That's in his Olympus books. He takes it to this kind of AllNet, which I think is it's going there, with the Google Glass.
Well, I see, and that's the thing, is I don't know that it is, because that the Google Glass came out and it was kind of not adopted. People didn't really take to it to that level. They I don't think. Oh, no, I don't think people are. I don't know.
Google Glass.
I don't think it's going to keep going in that direction.
Google Glass did disappear, and I think one of the big parts to that was the price point. But have you came across VR headsets?
I've seen pictures of them, but I've never used. Yeah, not.
You can get
participated in that.
You can get a VR headset, a cardboard piece for £2, so $2, and there's an app I've got on my phone, and it's called Roller Coaster, and you put this VR headset on, which is just a bit of cardboard with my phone stuck in, and sit on the couch, and it is like you're on a roller coaster. You get the same emotion, the same adrenaline, the same your stomach. It moves up and it moves down, and you're moving to the left, you're moving to the right, and it's obviously not at the same level as a roller coaster, but it's 80% there. The mind is fooled.
Are you talking about like that? Like it's like a stationary room that kind of tilts a little bit and then has a projector in the front?
Yeah, it's just a bit of cardboard, that basically is like a glasses.
I gotcha. So it's just like the VR headset thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it feels exactly like a roller coaster. Have you been on a real roller coaster?
It's a very valid point. I have been on many real roller coasters, yes. But it's the idea that obviously this is an infant technology. It's still a new technology, and with the power of just my handset, just a normal mobile phone, cell phone, and a bit of cardboard, I can replicate something that is tricking my mind and body enough to give me the sensation of, doing a loop-the-loop,
Sure.
That's giving me that tricking my body, that when I hit the big dip and I go, from 0 to 70 miles an hour, plunging into the abyss, my body reacts, my stomach, as if I went over a hill, soups up, and I'm like, ah, and then I'm laughing, and there's a euphoric experience, and I've not left my seat in front of the television in the front room.
Is it like replicatable? Does it feel like, can you continuously trick yourself like that, or does it just kind of work the first couple of times and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the sensation it does decrease, but I think that as the technology gets better, the software, the environments that they create, the interaction that they will create, I think it'll get to the point where we are in a science fiction book.
I've heard that theory. I don't know that I subscribe, but it's interesting.
The most interesting thing I have found to do with the Google goggles, I say they're £2 or $2, in any Android or iPhone handset, is you can fly through Google Maps in 3 dimensions. So I flew to Everest, and I flew up the side of Everest and stood at the top and had a look around. I also flew through the Grand Canyon. And it's...
You see, I don't think you could possibly feel like flying. They have that, what is that skydiving shit, like those suits that people wear, and they can almost like
a big fan
glide.
At the bottom.
Yeah. And they can almost like do the real thing, It's kind of
pointless.
I guess that's one way to look at it. But also kind of...
there is always going to be people in the world, like yourself, who step into a cage and actually fight. And there's going to be a majority in the world that want a similar experience, only if it's... but the thing is, it will never be a similar experience, but they want to be sold that it's a similar experience.
They do want to be sold, I agree.
And they want it for $5. And if it means putting on a headset and kidding on you're in a VR cage fight, or a VR roller coaster, or a VR skydive, then unfortunately I can see that being the future. People like to be sold. We are consumers.
Well, it's part of the future. I don't think it's the whole future.
So, in terms of the future, so the first question is, do you have any time restrictions on on the podcast?
I got to take a piss here in a little bit, but besides that, no, I'm fine. I could stick around for a while.
Cool. So in terms of, all right, I'll ask you a few questions on the future. You can, as you will do, and tell me I'm not interested in talking about that, or let's talk about that.
Yeah, I don't really have any strong opinions on the future, I guess, but I'm happy to discuss my thoughts.
Okay, so the immediate future in America, the United States, there is a big election happening. From my perspective, we have Trump and Clinton. What's your perspective?
Well, those are the candidates for the Republicans and the Democrats. And the likelihood that one of them gets elected is, I would say, almost, 100%. I mean, I guess in theory a third party candidate could come in, but I don't really see that happening. It certainly would be unprecedented.
We have a very different in Scotland. In Scotland, we have our own parliament, and then we're also a member of the United Kingdom, which is another parliament, and we're also a member of the European Union, which is another parliament. So it's like a 3-tier of bureaucracy to get anything kind of done. Whereas, obviously, the media, I don't know how much of the non-US media you watch. Obviously, being in Scotland,
I don't watch much of the U.S. media or non. I don't really watch a lot of TV, and I read. I try and keep up with what's going on to a certain extent, but I don't. I don't know how much of what I see I can believe, so it's kind of hard to draw any really firm and strong opinions, and I'm fine with that.
So we sort of see Trump as a fool, as somebody who's almost like he's promising a chicken in every pot. He's very much clued up on how to make sales and get the consumers to buy his political, if you like, process or ideology. And we see kind of Clinton as very much a liar, someone who is a career politician who will do and say anything to get the win. But we're also seeing quite a lot of sort of grassroots or people in America standing up and saying, this is a crazy system that we live in. We need to change this system. Is there a lot of sort of a political revival, a renaissance happening?
I don't know. It's hard to say, I guess. I think people recognize the insanity of kind of, life, and I don't know that anyone really knows what to do about it,
Well, that's a good question to move right on to the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life according to Matt Masterson? I know that's an absolutely ridiculous...
No comment. I don't know.
It's kind of ridiculously big question, It's like,
good luck, man.
So the next question's the exact same. God. What is God?
Well,
and you should have some good answers for this. Being a
sci-fi, I believe that God exists. I don't know. I don't know what form or that the approach necessarily matters. I was raised in a Catholic, Irish Catholic type background, and at first I kind of rebelled against that whole thing just because I saw the inadequacies of it, and that's for a time kind of all I could see. But I don't think there's any one way to see the the divine in the everyday. I think there's multiple ways to do that, and I'm not really judgmental on the ways that people choose to try. I don't know. I don't have answers for people. Is what I barely have answers for myself.
That's as good an answer as sort of any I've ever heard, And I've heard quite a few. Let me tell you. Is the Earth flat, or is the Earth a sphere, or a third option that I've not came across?
I don't have a really strong opinion on the thing. Honestly, I've heard a little bit of the flat Earth theory, and I don't, I don't have an opinion. It's like, would it surprise me if it was all fucking bullshit? Like, it wouldn't surprise me, I guess. But at the same time, I would say it's probably a sphere. I mean, I don't have an opinion really.
Because the sort of nature of the podcast is obviously everything is an illusion, and it's not necessarily that everything is an illusion or not.
Sure,
but it's just to get people kind of questioning even if
there's value in always being, I think, skeptical, because people will try and sell you, and if you give someone an inch, they'll just they'll press it.
They take the whole yard. Yeah,
and I think skepticism is valuable for just about everything. But at the same time, it'd be hard to believe that it's not a sphere. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but
I think
that would be pretty impressive if they pulled that one off.
Well, like when it comes to like flat Earth, if I was to go just on the abilities that I have, i.e. the five senses, observation, the mathematical skills that I have, etc., I would find it easier to conclude, without any background knowledge, without any bias, that the Earth was flat rather than a sphere, or flat with a dome. That would be your natural conclusion, because that's what your sort of senses verify. That
that's like our bubble, that that we all have our bubble.
Oh no, for sure. I just again, I like just getting the listeners to question the reality, because that's the whole nature of the beast. There's 7 billion people, and every single one has a different reality tunnel, a different experience, a different viewpoint, different culture, language, musical taste, interest, food, you name it. It's all crazy ass batshit. We're here for a blink of an eye on a floating blue dot in an infinite fucking vast ocean of infinite shit. It's awesome. So the next one, you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Have you ever heard of a guy called David Icke?
I have heard of David Icke, yes. I don't know what his views are on things, but I've heard of him. He's the reptilian guy.
Well, that's the key view. Lizard people.
Right. That's what he gets reduced to, I'm sure. He has other opinions as well, but that's the one that he's known for sure.
Recently, he was on British Broadcasting Corporation, so he was on the BBC, and he was saying a lot of really interesting stuff. He's at the minute doing a world tour, attempting to wake up the world, and the interviewer straight away says, "But you believe that the Queen is a lizard?" So, it's quite hard to come back from that.
Sure. That's like the flat earth thing. If you go on record saying, like, hey, I think this is a flat earth with a dome, then people can kind of dismiss you. And even though that's not fair, but they will. or they'll have that impulse too. People kind of see that something kind of is that off the beaten track. I think people have a hesitation.
It's such an interesting mentality, though, because I see it a lot in the martial arts, and it's maybe one of the reasons why you have so many different orthodox techniques, is because you're willing to think beyond the standard line. You know, you take something, I'm guessing, and try it, and if it works, then you add it to your arsenal.
Sure.
And with a lot of new ideas, a lot of people just, if it's not came from a bona fide coach, if it's not came from a respected source, they just shut it out. It's obviously it's full of crap. It's flat Earth. It's lizard people. It's karate straight kicks. Nope, not for me. And then, you know, and it gives people who are willing to question things, to be a true skeptic, an advantage, be it in martial arts or be it in discussion, etc., etc.
Right, because you have more freedom of thought, you have less kind of roadblocks that you won't go by.
Yeah.
You have, more freedom of thought. So
it's definitely an interesting kind of, from our perspective, it's an interesting thing which I've noticed with a lot of the guests that I've had on the podcast, is that kind of natural skepticism. They're willing to accept the question or the idea of, say, flat Earth or God, meaning of life, but they're willing to think about it before they just throw the generic answer that's been given to them. They've actually thought about, and even to the point where I don't have an answer, or
Yeah, I don't have an answer on a lot of things, so it's kind of.
There's a lot of things to think about,
Yeah. So. But it's good to have things to think about, I guess.
So I only have on the kind of conspiracy kind of stuff. I just have like social media. That's my last one, being social media being the end of society, in the sense of, like virtual friendships, virtual communications, and in very short period of time, people almost working through social media, putting on a VR headset, going to work in a call centre and finance, etc., going to their shopping, online shopping through a VR headset. And in the West, or in the wealthier nations, an entire generation of hooked up, jacked up into the machine, and third world society that essentially produces for those who are jacked into the machine, and then an easy reversal, because the bodies are so weak that the poor of the world revolts and overthrows the West, and the power goes east. That's proper sci-fi, yeah.
I don't know. Did you? I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. There's
Sorry,
I'm not a big fan of social media. I mean, I get why it's valuable. I get that it's. I don't know. I think there's value in plugging out of all that stuff, not really being worried about what people think and what you think people think. 'Cause most people don't think about what other people have going on. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of artifice with the social media and all that. I do it because I got like hooked up once I decided to start doing MMA again. Kind of like got into contact with an agent and shit like that through Facebook, and I've been doing my fighting business through the messenger on Facebook. So, I mean, I do it for business now, but if I wasn't trying to do fighting, I probably wouldn't have a Facebook account or any social media. It's definitely a.
So in terms of the podcast, that's me. I've made redundant all my questions. I've spoke some good stuff. You've definitely spoke some good stuff and really interesting stuff. And I think all that's left for me is to ask you if you have anything to say. You want to bring anything more to the?
Not really. I just want to thank you for having me on and plug the fight. Friday night, I think it comes on at 8:00. CBS Sportsnet, I think that's what it is. Or you can go online. I know they have some kind of website. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but you can stream it online. So Friday night, I think it starts at 8. So check it out.
The Final Fight Championships. It's yourself, Matt Masterson versus Leonardo Le something.
Leite, I think. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name, but Leite is the spelling. And he seems like a strong opponent, so I'm sure we'll be putting on a good show.
Excellent. And is there, obviously you said there you don't really have a lot of social media, but if there's anybody listening who maybe wants to get in contact, do you have, it's up to you if you wish to give
my email is mattmasterson42@yahoo.com. If there's something you need to reach me about, you can reach me through email.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Matt, for coming on, and I hope that you go forward. Cut your weight is a nice cut, and you go in there fresh, strong, and seek out a strong victory.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Until next time, thanks.
Everything is an Illusion is brought to you by robwallacemedia.com, award-winning media. TheEnergeticMind.com, inspirational, motivational and thought-provoking art. And Health Made Simple. Buy today, change your life forever. healthmadesimple.info. Thank you, and remember, question everything.